Hades 2 tier list. I mean, it is one game where tier list is important, ranking up and down. It is seriously Hades 2. So hello world, Modern here. I love doing tier list, right? Baldur's Gate 3, whatever, Fire Emblem, I love it, classes, so on. I love math, you know. I'm a game designer for many years. I've been balance designing, creative direction, so on. But I love, you know, the math of video game, the gameplay mechanics, right? So I love tier list, and this is seriously right. Hades 2 is the game where they actually really matters, because you constantly change your character build, right? You pick up a new thing, you meet a new god, you meet Hestia. After Hestia, you meet another god, you know, and so on. So you constantly meet a new god, you have to pick up and what to combine and so on. So seriously, this game, I've beaten it a few times now, and it is a very important, right? Hades 2 is very important. Think about what gods are good or not, because they're not equally good. Let's say that first here. The gods are very not balanced. Now, the game is in early access, and of course now when I'm making this video here, this has been the game been out in the rest for like a week. So yeah, it is not very balanced whatsoever. It's obviously the reason why Hestia is here, because Hestia is utter garbage, okay? So I'm gonna go get Hestia, it's so terrible. So put it here. But let's break it down. I will say here that in this video I am looking at like one, like, you know, per god, but of course I am also considering what are the possible combos or whatever. But I guess another video could be like the duos, like the best combination, like a path of gods or whatever. But I will look here at like how good are they alone primarily, but also of course talking about some certain builds or whatnot, right? But I will start from like an alone perspective, so to speak, which is still what you kind of will build, right? So Hestia then, the reason I have it here, right? Because when I do tier list, I love getting the absolutely godlike, the S tier guys, right, first, and the trash first. Because every time, the exact same thing when I do this for a living, right? When I balance games that I work on, I do the exact same thing. It is much easier as a game balance designer to look at what is the best character and what is the worst character. And then you have kind of the guys in the middle, right? It's much harder to actually balance the guys that are like B plus tier, you know, like, oh, it's pretty good, but maybe a little stronger. It's easier to say this is too powerful or this is too weak, right? So again, in my tier list, I like to start with godlike, top tier, and bottom tier. So Hestia then, absolute trash tier, guys. Absolute trash tier. By far the worst character in the game. I'll just say that because Danmachi Hestia is way better, and the whole debate that course is really silly. You know, you can have many the animes, gods, whatever. But seriously, I think it's kind of funny from my standpoint, right, being a hardcore gamer, so to speak, loving math or whatever. Everyone is complaining about this thing in Hestia's face and so on, right? But I haven't seen a single person bring out the biggest issue with Hestia in Hades 2, and I say it in the middle. She's just terrible. She's by far the worst goddess. Trash tier is basically use Hestia. She's incredible trash tier, okay? Hestia is so bad in this game. I avoided like the player she is, right? Not because she got black. I avoided her because she's terrible, okay? The thing is that she gives you like a burn effect called Scorch. And it's so incredibly low burn damage that it's completely pointless. It's like, oh, I can stack it up higher, I guess, but if I have like a knife then, if I do like 50 attacks with my knife, now they have like 50 burning stacks. But if I have 50 Aphrodite attacks then I do double attack, that's 200 attacks, or 100 times ever. It's just like, oh yeah, basically no boss in the game will like die from the burning. And, importantly, especially with Kronos, most bosses in the game will be able to go immune. You know, Hecate goes immune twice, Skyla does it several times, depending on her band members. The Kerberos up and down, and Kronos goes immune all the time. So you can't even dot him because he removes it all the time. So dotting Hestia is absolute garbage because dot doesn't work in the game. And it's not the same thing like a Hephaestus. Hephaestus has a dot too. Hephaestus has a dot, right? Which is like 400 damage, and after a while, you know, it bursts. Basically, it's a one-time dot deal, right? Like a Doom effect. However, that's just like 5-second thing. So you can put it on like Kronos, and it will activate before it goes invulnerable, most likely. But stacking up high burning effect, right, with Hestia on Kronos doesn't work. Like, it works for a temporary short, but it doesn't really work. And Hestia doesn't scale on power weapons, right? Because it's a flat damage. Hestia gives you a flat burning. Same with the Hephaestus. Both of them doesn't scale with fast attacks. It doesn't scale with like high powerful slack like the axe thing, right? So if you have the axe and Hestia, it's like unplayable. Because you do really slow attacks with a burn effect that's really low. And also for that matter, honestly, Hephaestus with axe is also after shit as well. It's trashy too for that matter. But Hephaestus works with certain weapons. But Hestia is terrible. Only the dagger. And I tried, I tried to go like full Hestia with the dagger. Because they have the quick attack speed, so you can do like most dots. But Kronos and so on, they keep getting invulnerable and then remove the dots, so you have to redo it. And it's so terrible. So that is actually the biggest issue with Hestia. It is utter trash tier. So ignore the whole Danmachi debate or whatever. She's just trash. Utter trash. Obviously, Aisha is the best character. Yeah. Where's my Aisha, man? The Hades has 2, has no Aisha, okay? So I pointed out, there's no Aisha in Hades 2. This is the real goddess, okay? Just saying. But anyway, the Hestia then is absolute trash tier. We can put her in the trash pile. Where is she? In the bottom here. That is... Where's her ugly face? There it is. But seriously, she's so terrible, right? Because dot doesn't work. The dot could do like 3 or 4 times damage. It would be. I mean, honestly, even if the Scorch thing does like double the damage it does, she still would be the worst goddess in the game. That's how bad she is. Even if you double her current damage, she still would do the lowest damage in the game by far. And man, I can say a lot about Hestia. Hestia is terrible, so terrible. And she has like no thing going for her either. And this is also very important here. What I mean by that is that some gods in this game, like some boons, are actually like, well, maybe the god isn't that good, but they have, one boon. It's like, well, if I get that boon though, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you have this perfect build in your head, like, oh, I want to have these 2 Hermes boons. Oh, they're so good, right? I don't care about the other boons for Hermes for this guild, but that thing is so fantastic. Or this Zeus boon is amazing in this build, right? There are other gods that have that. Hestia doesn't have that. Hestia has no good boons. I hate her so much. She literally has 0 good boons that you are actually impressed by. Like a boon you actually can build around your character. Right? There's nothing with her that you feel like this is meaningful for her. Her best ability is basically making your Q turn into a projectile, so you can throw it like a fireball. Zeus has that too, but it's much better. Yes, Zeus summons as a lightning ball. This is a way better version of it. This is a way better version of it. Way better. And yeah, it does like burning, of course, using the Scorch thing. But it's really terrible. She's one of the boon where you sacrifice a current boon you have on you, and then you get more mass health, whatever. That boon is pretty good. It's by far the best boon. If, of course, you get a bad boon sacrifice, right? So it randomizes a boon in your collection. If you guess one of your terrible boons, right? If you have another bad boon, and you sack that for her health boon, then it's a good boon. But otherwise it's terrible too, because if you guess like your special build boon or your weapon boon, whatever, yeah, that's terrible. So it is completely RNG if it's good or not. So generally, yeah, Hestia is by far the worst character in the game. You can basically like have like a Hestia tier. She's so bad. She's by far the worst character. Like I genuinely hate playing her, and I will avoid her as a plague. Seriously, I would never take her doors. The only reason that I ever go for Hestia in this game is when I'm making an elemental build, right? So let's say I have the boon that gives you more damage if you have 2 of each element, and I lack fire. Okay, I have to Hestia there because I need to have the Hestia fire, right? Or I have some other, I need 4 or 5 fires. The Hestia has a fusion which you give it like if you have a lot of fire, you do more damage. But let's think do Hestia too, right? To be able to get that buff with her, that your fire does more damage, like everything you do does based on your fired boons. To get that with her, you need to have like 4 or 5 Hestia usually, which means that you are do 0 damage. It's like, oh yeah, I do 10% more damage out of my nothingness. Yeah, it's great. So the only way to get that boon is have like Hephaestus or Appolo, and then get that perfect Hestia boon with the fire thing. but Hephaestus also has the weakest. Oh god, it's so bad. But yeah, honestly, the fire boon that she has, the flat fire static boons, is also probably seriously the worst element buff as well. Yeah, so it's like she has the worst infusion, the worst duo things, I think more or less. Yeah, the Hephaestus isn't good either. By far the worst main attack, and also the worst passive buffs. So she's so goddamn trash to you. And I find it so funny again, right, with the whole Hestia debate, the whole who's the best god or whatever, Danmachi or Hestia, and I'm just thinking like, honestly guys though, she's absolute trash tier. That is the worst part, and she's so bad that I'm gonna make her an own tier, and I mean it literally. She's so incredibly bad that I'm gonna go this way, okay? I'm gonna have here like we're gonna have mid here instead. This is how bad she is. Seriously, this is how trash she is. So we have mid Boons here. We got trash here, right? And then we got Hestia in the bottom. This is how bad she is. She has her own trash tier. She's so bad that I can't really put her in the same as trash tier. I'm gonna give her like, I guess I give her blackface then, so she could be like that thing. But I mean it genuinely. Like, she's so bad. Why isn't it to the white for? Okay, what's her white then? Like that then, suit face, yeah. But seriously, she's so bad that she deserves her own trash tier. This is the whole video now. No, but seriously, I honestly want to summarize this thing here again, because let me just emphasize why Hestia is an incredible bad character. I mean, honestly, let me summarize again and emphasize really why she's an incredibly bad character, because this kind of gives you, I feel, a good understanding of the other gods as well, right? So again, then Hestia has a flat damage dot, okay? That was way too low damage per second, incredibly low, and every boss, especially Kronos, will go invulnerable all the time, meaning you can never stack enough dots on him anyway. And every other god, especially Aphrodite, will make you do so much more damage per hit instead, that you're like, why would I dot him if I can do double damage per second anyway? And it's just zero good passive boons, literally, and she has the worst elemental boon in the game. And honestly, I find it funny again, right? The whole Danmachi, Hestia, worship Hestia, so on, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, have you played the game actually? Because the big issue is she's the worst character in the game by far. She's absolutely garbage, godlike trash tier. She deserves her own trash tier. She's in Hestia trash tier, okay? Incredible bad character. Hestia out of the way, but honestly, I think it's important to understand, right? That Hestia, because flat damage is pretty shit in the game, right? In all these games, flat damage is bad, and that kind of gives us an introduction to Hephaestus, right? So Hephaestus is trash tier, okay? But like I said, he's much better than Hestia. That's why she honestly, and people say, oh, I'm hyperbolic, whatever. No, I mean it literally. Hestia needs her own trash tier, because Hephaestus, I would say, is definitely trash tier as well. Also a very bad boon late game. He's very, very bad, seriously. Don't play Hephaestus, right? But Hephaestus is actually very, very powerful on the first floor, right? So Hephaestus is probably the best god on the first floor. He's the worst god on the last floor, as Hestia. But, you know, he's like the worst god as of her. So that means that, you know, like, he's actually, obviously, compared to Hestia, he's actually quite, you know, okay, this is actually really good, right, on level 1, so to speak. So he's not, like, terrible comparable to her, but he's terrible compared to, like, Zeus or whatever, right, or Chaos or. But yeah, so there's a huge difference there. That at least he has one, like, the first bit he shines, right? So Hephaestus then, he's all around this thing called blast furnace and vents, right? Again, it's very, very similar to Hestia. They both have some issue, right? That he does a flat damage debuff on them, a dot, basically, right? And you can see it as a dot, right? Because Hestia has like traditional damage over time, like every second you take a burn damage thing. He has, you get like an earthquake on you after 5 seconds, right? But it's basically it's a dot, right? You know, instead of taking, so it does 400 damage at 5 seconds. Basically, take that, divide that by 5, right? That's 80 damage per second, right? So basically, he gives you a dot that does 80 damage per second, and then you have a cooldown on it for 12 seconds, and then you can do it again, right? Hestia gives you like a dot for like a 5 damage, has no cooldown and it stacks, but obviously it takes you way longer time, right, for Hestia to actually be able to do 80 damage with her much, much, much weaker dot. Again, that's why she's incredibly, but that's different here, right? He's actually quite powerful, right? So Hephaestus actually has this, again, the strongest ability on level 1, because 80 damage per second on level 1 is actually very, very powerful. So he can basically, you hit the enemy once, right, on the first floor, then you can just go back, wait, and then they die immediately when they explode, right? So that damage is very, very high. Now Hephaestus has another thing, where another boon will make, if they first get this, like, the furnace deal on them, and when it explodes, ever hit by that gets another one, or basically a new one. It does the same debuff, but it does the same thing. And then it also will explode. It's honestly kind of boring, because it really is the same thing again, but that second one can't, like, repeat itself. So it has 2 different names. It's like Blast Furnace and this thing or what, I don't know, it doesn't matter. But basically it's like Earth debuff 1, Earth debuff 2, right? But together, I think the nerfed ones, it does 350 damage, I think, right now in the current build. But basically, it's like double your damage, you know, and then you can do it once again per 12 seconds, right? And also, of course, if you play 5 stars, getting higher level on his best thing, right? So you have a shorter cooldown on your furnace. It's a massive damage decrease, right? For build with him than earth with him. But anyway, that's the kind of his main 2 things, right? You hit them with this thing, and then they get the debuff that changes on all the guys, and then you can do it like once every 12 seconds, right? You know, and that's very high damage, 800 damage, right? Or 750 now, I think, is in the current build. But it used to be 800 damage. But anyway, so that's really massive. It's still not good at all on Kronos, okay, or even on Kerberos, and so on. So that's a problem, right? You know, even though, like I said, he's probably the strongest boon on floor 1, and that gives him some value. I have a very hard time seeing anyone else being as bad as him, except of course Hestia, obviously ignore Hestia, on the last floor, right? Because yes, you do 800 damage, which is good, but you can only do 800 damage, right? Of course, my point here is that no matter how you build, no matter what else you get, right, flat stuff is basically never good in these games, right? Flat damage is never going to be as good as percentage, as dynamic damage, right? Damage that increases, right? We always come into my favorite later, Aphrodite, but Aphrodite I bring it up again because it's a perfect example of, you know, this is like much better because she has 100% damage increase if you're close to them. The 100% damage is doubling your damage, right? And then of course, if you level up that ability, it goes 100%, 150%, you get 200%, you get like, you know, triple your damage, right? So to speak. So that's like a massive damage at the 4th floor, right? Whatever in your current build. And it's just more and more damage, right? And then of course her ability stacks with all the abilities, right? So because you have double damage, then you have double attack with like Daido's hammer or whatever, right? So you get more and more damage, right? Where Firestorm then, okay, yeah, it's like 400 flat damage, maybe even 800, but it doesn't stack, right? It doesn't help you to have more abilities. There is no purpose, like, you know, your attack speed or whatever, like, it doesn't matter, right? That's probably the fact. Your attack speed doesn't make it do more damage. I mean, there are some other boons that, like, when you do dot damage, their armor takes more damage or whatever. There's some stuff that makes it better. But basically, again, he has the same issue at Hestia, of course. And when I saw with her, right, he said, yeah, flat damage is just flat. It doesn't do more damage than the boss, right? Now, of course, his damage has a short, to speak, effect on it. So it does work on Kronos, though, absolutely. Which again makes him a better team than her then, because, you know, his 800 flat damage really happen at least, right, you know, before he turns invulnerable most of the time. But honestly, it is not that good because you have to avoid during that and so on. That being said, though, to be fair for 5 stars, I do kind of like him with some builds as a special attack on your Q, or sometimes as your mouse, right? So you have your breath attack, you know, and then you have your right click, that's usually like a raise ability. So for example, if I'm playing like a high damage, very quick dagger build, then I might actually put 10, depending on what I get, but the fighters might be useful there. Basically, you throw the dagger, right, when you can, 12 second cooldown, 400 damage, then you spam your best attack. So you only use the special attack only for the cooldown. That's pretty fine, okay? If you get like one boon, and that's the best boon you get, and you don't really use your special anyway, or your Q, whatever. I mean, it might be fine if he's like, I can trigger him like every once in a while, and doesn't really like bother like my rotation, so to speak. And otherwise, though, Fox has like, there's one thing I like with him though. His best build is actually when you take damage, you do more damage. Yeah, his best build for late game, an actual like good build for better characters, is the one that when you take damage, you do, what is it, like 15% more damage on the first level. But basically, it's like a revenge thing, and that actually is pretty good. Because of course, but obviously this means that the fight isn't your damage deal, right? You're playing like a Zeus build, and then the fight is just one of the many passive boons you have picked up, you know, on the side, right? So it doesn't really make him that good, but that boon is actually very good. Sometimes, if you really tank, it's very good. If you can take damage purposely to them, it doesn't matter for you, so on. And then he has like the impervious, so you can't take damage the first seconds, which is decent in some encounters. But that's kind of it, you know. And even that percentage thing isn't really it's not a game changer. It's like okay, but anyway, let's go on. But I get my point. Why this is so bad, I hope. Now, I think the best then, the naked lady, yeah, Aphrodite. She's godlike. As I said earlier, let's go. Now then, let's go for, of course, the everyone's favorite waifu, right? Aphrodite. And like I said earlier, we're going after top tier and bottom tier, right? And I would say straight up, she's like the best goddess, more or less. In most builds you can play in the game, Aphrodite is probably the best main god to have, like straight up. She's so good that I sometimes, very often actually, play with her keepsake, just to get her earlier. I usually start with Kronos, commented later, but yeah, Aphrodite is like incredibly powerful, because of course she's the reverse, right, of Hestia and Hephaestus. She got this ability that basically both her special are the same as the Q and so on, which is if you're close to the enemy, you do more damage, right? So if you're close to the enemy, you do 100% damage. It's 150% for your special. This of course then will increase if you level them up, right? But basically it means that her boon makes you do double attack, right? It makes you do double the damage as you would do with a normal attack ability. For the knife, this obviously is the best for the knife because you're close anyway, but it still works for every weapon, and the axe also is fantastic. Even though the axe has very long range, alright, but for most boss fight, you're standing on top of the boss with your axe, because the axe special and its range is terrible, right? So for some builds, with the staff, even the knife, for example, but especially with the staff and it's called Umber Flame, so on, and the skull also, of course, you're standing on range, right? You're standing on range sometimes, depending on your build, of course, but you're standing on range usually. With the axe is actually as close as the knife is for bosses, because it really doesn't benefit you having to do range ability with the axe. It's kind of a weird weapon where it's like, yeah, it hits half the screen, but you can't do anything if you're outside that range, right? So anyway, I just play the axe very, very close combat. I recommend playing that, so axe with Aphrodite is also good then, because you double your damage, right? So step with that, you have the axe, and you get the Daedalus hammer buffs, which obviously is the best always. I have no Daedalus here, but obviously Daedalus hammer is always the best thing to get, of course, because then it gives like so on, right? That moves. So if you have that hammer, and then you pick like, what is it on axe? On axe it's like your third attack does double damage, but it costs you 20 magic, right? For example. So you have that, and you have Aphrodite, right? Now you're gonna do quadruple damage. Yeah, it's like, okay, that's like, you're gonna do 100% and then 100%, yeah. You're gonna do so much more damage, right? And if you had any other boon on that, for example, Demeter, you would do like, I think like 60% on the first floor, no, it's 40% on the one. It's something like that, 40%, 60 on the special. So that'll be like 40% and doubling that, right, for a double ice smack, right? Which is still pretty fine. It's pretty fine, right? But here's my point. Aphrodite is absolutely god tier in this game. Absolutely the best goddess in Hades 2, because she makes any Daedalus boon thing just amazing, right? Because every special or your normal attack with Daedalus thing, that's like doubling your attack, 2 Q attacks, 2 this thing or whatever, everything that, and she doubles damage, right? Or on special, she does it 150%, even on level 1. So that's so much more damage, and basically her boon is just the best, right? Because it stacks with any other boon. You can basically do so much more damage. It's fantastic. Furthermore, Aphrodite has actually a mana regen, which is also very, very good, okay? She arguably has the best mana magic thing in the game, which is that if you're close to them, you basically constantly regain mana. And yeah, of course you're going to be close because you're playing Aphrodite's build, right? I always say it here though, of course, if you're not playing with her normal, if you're playing, let's say, a Demeter like far range frost build, okay, fine, then her magic won't work because you're playing at max range, right? But if you're playing like most builds where you're actually close to the boss, right, especially with her herself, then this magic thing will give you infinite mana basically if you play that. So it's actually the best mana thing. And then of course, when you look at Aphrodite, she has this different, how say it, her debuff makes them weak, they makes them just miss you or whatever. That is not a very good debuff. However, there are of course boons that make them take more damage through weak. There's one duo boon that must take 20% more damage if you're weak. There's one duo boon, both one with Poseidon, which is pretty good. Makes you're always close range to them no matter what, which gives you infinite mana then. If you have that. Yeah, there's one thing is that you're always close range, which is interesting. But even better is the Hera boon with her, which makes Hera has Hitch as a debuff, and you have Weakened, right? And then this boon makes both Hitch and Weakened like stack together and be better. So that makes those debuffs amazing. So she got all that stuff right, and again, everything she does is like percentage based. Even the mana regen is like you get mana, you know, closer to you are and so on. It all works fantastic. And lastly, she has one of the best passive too. She got the passive that gives you more max health. Like every time you gain max health, the max health is increased, right? So you get even more max health. So she's very good with the whole tanking thing and giving her own ability to like stack up next to them and do more damage. Yeah, so she's like the best goddess, straight up. And she also works with like every weapon too, because just like doubling your damage is worse with every weapon, right? Works with every other hammer, and again works with any other god too, right? That's what she's so good too, because if you start with Aphrodite, you can go like any other god and you will do so much more damage, right? It just matters. So she's fantastic. Now, let's talk about Chaos. Chaos is arguably the best god in the game, but he's a little special. So, first of all, his boons are actually weaker than simple Aphrodite, like straight up. He has a very similar boon, like your attack does more damage percentage, but it's lower, right? However, Chaos is outside the normal boons, right? So obviously them together is amazing, because you can have like you can have like 200% damage from Aphrodite, and he can give you another 69% on his ability, which gives you 260%, and you have blah blah so on. So that's how you get those like 6-7 times, you know, damage increase on your axe or whatever. So you can swing for like 1,000 damage per swing. Like that. That's how you get those crazy builds, right? So for example, I used to start with Chaos Keepsake. So I get an epic Chaos immediately from the first floor. That's one of my favorite starts with most weapons, right? So I can immediately get it immediately. It was super good. So he actually is like really interesting. But so his moves actually aren't that good either. So I do find them a little orgy, because even with the Keepsake, which you get like an epic or whatever, right? You might be like, I don't really want that. None of them are that good. And of course, you have to address that when you pick up Chaos, you also get a health take damage, right? You lose like 17 health or whatever, and then you get a debuff, a curse basically, for like usually 3 to 4 encounters, and it doesn't really matter, honestly. Most of the time it's just kind of whatever, but sometimes it's like, man, all of these 3 kings are actually really, really bad for whatever reason. My build is really bad, so on, right? So I still think he's godlike, because he's just, again, Daedalus Hammer is of course the best thing in the game, right? Obviously, by far the best thing. But this is like God, you know, he's the best thing to pick up, because you get like double attack or whatever. And he's kind of like a half good hammer, right? He's like a weaker hammer. Again, he works outside the system. Right? He works outside the system, which makes him so good. So you have to take him, I feel, almost all the time, because he stacks better. Right? He stacks better. But also, of course, means that those guys, especially earlier, Hestia or what, they all work worse with him, right? Because they're like, you know, they don't really, you know, percentage wise, they don't really increase the damage. So that's again why they're bad, right? They can't really use him. Well, arguably, I guess he has an attack speed increase that is good for Hestia, I suppose, but not that much. But I suppose. But I would say he's like either A tier. He's like high A tier or like really like low S tier. So S is got it, yeah. But he's not that good, honestly, in a sense. But you have to kind of have him because... But it's like I said, he's like outside the system. Right? So you need to put him because it's going to make your build better, definitely. But it is very orange, you know. Sometimes you meet him and you're like, oh my god, they're all 3 terrible. Nothing has me at all, so it's like, But anyway, let's go on. Another A-tier guy, though, is Hermes. I put him over... but I would say he's better than Chaos. So Hermes, you can kind of see where I'm going probably, right, with his tier list. Hermes is very similar to Aphrodite. He's very percentage based, right? Basically, he gives you more attack speed, chance for a double attack, and so on, right? He's basically like, whatever you have currently gets better, right? The thing with Hermes, though, is he's a very, very bad early boon, honestly. It's almost 18 on that alone. He's interesting because Hermes is like one of the best late game boons, right? Because most of his boons, like I said, are like, oh, double attack or fast attack or whatever. Yeah, they're basically like buffing whatever you currently have, right? Running faster or whatever. They're all like percentage based. But of course, early game is actually pretty terrible. You need to have the other boons to make him work, because he basically just empowers you, right? And again, it's similar to Chaos. They both have very similar effects actually. Chaos is better, of course, but has a drawback how to get them, right? They're actually very similar. But of course, in the end of the game, you basically should have both of these two characters, right, to empower whatever current build you have, right? If you have the Aphrodite build, you want to have both Hermes and Chaos to empower your basic attack, so you can do that, you know, quadruple damage thing and double attack speed or whatever and so on. You need to have both these guys. So they can fulfill that. And then also Hermes has one boon, which is actually very, very good, which is the slowing down of projectiles. And it sounds kind of silly at first. I was like, I don't need it. I'm a best player in the world. But I mean, honestly, if you get like epic version that or higher, it's so easy. Like you can avoid everything Chaos does, and it's mostly for Chaos, but it is so easy to avoid the boss attacks with that ability. I don't think you need, honestly, I don't think you need that practice slow at all, except for the last boss, basically, in my opinion. It is, I mean, it's good, of course, it's good, but I mean, it is really good. I mean, but honestly, I don't know, I take almost no damage from normal practice, I guess, until the boss, but it makes Chaos way easier, and it's really worth like 1 point to speak. One of your boons into like, oh, slowing down like 50% of his projectiles is so much easier to avoid them. It makes that fight actually really easy sometimes. And if you combine that with your runes, you can slow down. It's so good. So it's very, very fantastic. And he's just a good character overall. But again, I guess he's like reverse Hephaestus, to be fair, where he's the probably the worst god on the first floor, but the best god on like the fourth floor usually. So it's a little bit like, okay, now let's do Selene, the moon goddess. She's very, very hard to actually, I think, theory. And I would definitely want to put her in godlike, but she's not trash. And okay, so this is kind of hard, honestly. I will motivate her in a weird way here, okay? You need your keepsake, okay? You need your keepsake. But if you have her keepsake, she's like S tier. So the thing is that Selene is, first of all, you need runes, okay, to play her. I said in my other video as well, right? My first video, Hades 2. You need to have runes. If you don't have runes, you can't play the moon god, because you need to have like more magic and so on. You need to stake up your build, right? So the further into the game, the more psych you have and the more runes you unlock. You're gonna unlock, you know, more max mana, or you're gonna unlock like mana reg and so on, right? You need to have that, because basically what she does, right, is that she gives you a moon ability, which is very powerful, but it costs like double your max mana or whatever, right? So the first floor, I hate starting with Selene. I like Selene to some extent, but she's very, very bad as your first bloom, because you enter the game, you're like, oh, I have like 30 mana. I was like, I have use 200 mana in one fight. You're like, okay, that's never gonna happen. So basically, it's impossible to use her ability for the first floor, unless you have the perfect rules for it, like all the magic rules for it. But honestly, there are better rules in the game, so you probably should have that. But it's like, yeah, it's very, very weird. She's a terrible pick for the first floor, seriously. Probably the worst god for the first floor. Even worse than Hermes, probably. Yeah, straight up. Unless you get like a lot of them. But she actually gets pretty good if you have a lot of her, because after the first time with Selene, then you unlock her special talent tree, which is different per like ability, and now she actually becomes really powerful, because you can get like 20% more flat damage, you can get like a lot more gold, you can get some interesting ability like turning invulnerable when you're doing your ability. You can turn like, you can take a damage, or you can like hide for this thing and so on. So she has this little weird thing going on. Generally speaking, I recommend taking her Fountain of Wells, so you can like heal yourself. That one is just great overall, the healing. That's by far her cheapest ability to use, and you can use it like 3 times per floor. It actually is better than it sounds, because you can regain those 3 heals per floor, right? Per like fountain after the boss. So absolutely, especially if you're lower level, not have many runes yet, her healing is actually the one that's useful. It's the cheapest cost too. But the thing is that her keepsake And I see the same thing. When I go to Keepsake, I almost feel she's actually godlike tier, honestly. Like, her Keepsake is so good because her Keepsake, right, gives you 3 more talent specs, right? So basically, the Keepsake is +1 moon step, but it goes to rank 3. So if you have it on rank 3, of course, then you get 3 more steps, right? Which means that when you get the second Selene, after the first one, it gives you the basic ability, right? Then you get the second one. Now suddenly Selene is freaking godlike because now you get 6 steps usually on the second one if you have the Keepsake. So you can like fill it out immediately. Then you get all these buffs, like all the 20% more damage, and I'm turning mortal for 5 seconds and so on. Then suddenly Selene is like OP instead. So it's really weird. So usually what I do is that I get 1 Selene right on the first floor, then I put on the Keepsake, and for the next floor then, for floor 2, then I pick up the 6 more stack, or for floor 3 then if I have so on. Yeah, and then suddenly it's amazing. So usually if I can piss it out and get her +6 on one of the floor 2 or 3, it's really, really good. It's not that she's one of the best scouts, but I have to say, she requires your items, she requires your runes, and end of the day I actually put her kind of an A tier, because I think she's better than some other guys still though, if you have the correct build and everything, but she requires a lot though, yeah. But it's kind of like, it's an interesting design, because she's probably the goddess that benefit the most from the players actually, the account leveling up, right? By far, yeah, by far. And honestly, she's trash tier, right? When you start playing the game, she's trash tier, absolutely. She becomes like S tier if you're max level, basically, max cycle, so on, yeah. So, but maybe mid is what she's. I honestly, it's hard to pick, yeah, because in a way she's mid, because again, she starts trash and becomes good in the end of the game. Because mid, yeah, it's a very uneven hero, very, very uneven. But I think A is probably what she is, because end of the day, I am looking at this tier list, assuming you have all the gear, right, you know, more or less. You have all the levels, and that's obviously also why these 2 flask guys are terrible, right? So to make it fair, she probably should be up here, because, yeah, these guys are, like, if I imagine, Hephaestus, he gets worse every level you get, right? The more you level up, obviously this flat character are gonna be worse, and she's gonna get better, right? So that's kind of what we're going with, like, assuming you have the best gear, right? But anyway, next hero. Let's do Poseidon. So Poseidon is interesting. He's also kind of similar to Hephaestus issues and Hestia. He's kind of flat, you know. He does flat damage, pushes them around, does flat stuff. But the thing is that it is does something, right? Hephaestus uses those high damage, and then that becomes low damage late game. Then Hestia uses those low damage, right? And no actual ability to it. Poseidon is like, he does like this, you know, he makes them knock back, he makes them touch each other, and they get displacement damage. So again, that all that is flat, which is again early game is very powerful, late game is terrible. But it also does a little bit of like crowd control, right? So at least he's like, so to speak, the early high damage but then low late damage. It also does a little bit of like a, you know, control over it. So it adds a little more than Hestia, right? And also out damage her. But in the end, it's not that good though, right? Straight up, it's the same issue, just like with those 2. It doesn't do that much. It's like pretty low. He's probably does lower damage than Hephaestus, to be fair. It's not enough. I like, one thing I like, say don't know, is his, what's called like sea treasure? Whatever it's called. But sometimes when it's boon, pretty often he gives you a boon that is like, here's a lot of money. Yeah, but seriously, because if you enter Shadow Shop, right, where you can buy boons and so on, if you buy his boon, he might give you the money back, yeah, and also get you more max life or health and so on. He throws you like money and health and stuff like that, right? And it's just like, oh, usually it's worth it, because you get more, you get a lot more resources you get normally. So it's like, okay, I guess. So that's kind of weird buff for him. Decent, and his duos are pretty good as well. But again, I think he's honestly pretty fair as a mid character. Like, okay, you also have the slippery debuffs to take more damage and so on. So yeah, again, like he has some debuffs, right? He has some crowd control that makes him better than these trash tier characters. But he's not that good. He's honestly probably kind of trashy too. I put him in mid for now, but he's definitely probably mid or like trash tier as Hephaestus. And honestly, I cannot stop using him completely after I... Just like with the Hephaestus, right? Same argument. After you level up your account a bit, and you start... Yeah, he's only good when you're like a low level account. The stronger you get, the weaker he gets. Just like with all the guys. But like I said, he has a little more debuffs than they have. so it's a little more useful. But he's like, meh. He's not that good. But he's probably fairly either mid or trash. Now let's do Demeter then. She's probably honestly up in. Now let's do Demeter then, Grandma. So she's like, yeah, A tier. I think it's been accurate straight up. I think she's very much accurate A tier, honestly, because she's not like this like super powerful buffs where you get like a lot more damage. I never found her like to be this amazing. Oh my god, I get the ice attack. I never felt that she does like enough damage, right? Like 40% more damage, and so on. Her numbers aren't there, right? It's like kind of too low. However, the freezing debuff is very powerful. It's obviously one of the best debuffs in the game. Doesn't work very well on like Kronos or whatever, but it still works with the bosses. But obviously has less effect per boss then, but it still does something. It's also done a little bit. And basically, you know, like I said, Aphrodite has the 100% increase, right, on damage. And she got like 40% increase on stability, or 50 or whatever. But I think it's 40, I think, on first floor. So it's like, you know, it's not as good, but it does something, right? And that 40% damage increase is going to be higher than Hestia, for example. Because she does nothing, right? Yeah. And it's going to be higher than Phaistos on high level, actually. So it's something like that, right? And also, again, she's a quite powerful debuff. So it's like, she's pretty good. She's pretty good. But I don't think she's like as godlike tier because her debuffs aren't good enough by themselves, nor is her damage good enough. So it's a little bit that. That being said, though, if you have both ice on your normal attack in special, then you get her like ice freeze lasts longer, which is another debuff on her. That actually is quite powerful. Suddenly, she's actually quite dangerous because you basically give it like stun freeze everyone forever, yeah, and all the normal enemies. I mean, but the thing is though, and I want to point out here, right, this is to me is like really powerful, of course, for any player. But in the end of the day, though, it doesn't do anything on Kronos or like Kerberos or whatever, or you know the. I don't want to spoil too much here, but it's Kronos, but all the guys on top, yeah, like the Golem, he's Cyclops, Cyclops, that's the one. Nah, trying to spoil too much, or whatever. It's like, you know, like she got really good crowd control with her freezing. Like I said, it's arguably the best debuff in the game, right? And then if you have the ice lasts double as long or whatever, yeah, of course, it's amazing. But what does that do against the boss? Like nothing. Yeah, so in the end of the day, it's like, okay, but it doesn't do anything against the harder bosses, more or less. It actually does something, to be fair. I'm a little bit harsh on her. It does something. It's like, instead of freezing Kronos for like, let's say 1 second, it's 2 seconds, right? But the thing is that on a normal enemy, it's like 4 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever, higher level again. So it's like really noticeable. Oh my god, this guy is frozen for like half the fight, right? But on the best boss, it's like a little longer. It doesn't really help you that much against him. So, end of the day, right, doesn't really help you that much on the last boss or even on the third boss as well. And that's actually kind of where it matters the most, of course. I actually really like her Cyclone, though. So, one thing I haven't mentioned so much in this video here is that sprinting is terrible, right? And I feel everyone agrees with me on that thing. Yeah, sprinting in this game is terrible. I hate how it fits to sprint. You know, I hate fighting the root enemy. No, but it's easy, but just the way it puts on you, I don't know. Sprinting feels wrong in the game, and I haven't said earlier in the video, but whatever. You should avoid every like sprinting boon. Okay, every sprint boon is terrible. They're all like useless. Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, I do lightning bolts, or oh my god, the one from like Hestia, I do like the extremely low burn damage on it. Oh my god, yeah, it's like 10 damage, and it's so bad. Okay, sprinting in this game is really, really terrible. Don't pick any sprint boons. That being said, though, Demeter's Storm's boon is the only one good, basically. Yeah, like her boon is actually as good because if you sprint to the boss and stop at them, you will put them in this tornado cycle thing, right? That makes them freeze and slower. And I think that another slow isn't the same slow as your normal freeze ability. So you can stack it with your normal freeze ability for some reason. It's two different kind of slows, which is, I know it's strange, but seriously, yeah. So it's two different kind of slows. So actually, every sprint boon in this game is absolute trash tier, except Demeter's. Her one is really, really good. But again, everything else is really terrible. Don't take the Poseidon water knockbacks. They're all really terrible. But it's the tornado one, whatever it's called. Like it's called like winter cyclone. Whatever. Yeah, there's only one from Demeter. That one is actually legitimately good. It's like an S tier boon, okay? It's her best boon, I would say, easily, yeah. Because it's the only boon that makes sprinting useful, yeah. Because it actually is really, really good debuff. So that one, seriously, is an S tier boon. And also one reason why you pick Demeter pretty high here in the tier list, because that boon is very, very powerful. And it's very powerful with her herself, right? If you have her as your main god, and then you get that cyclone thing, it's really good. Because it does, again, stack with your freezer things. It's fantastic. But yeah, for everybody else, it's just terrible. You don't pick the speed pool. They're so bad. Okay, let's do Zeus then. And I follow Demeter. He's an 8 together. Okay, Zeus is very powerful. And I probably put him actually here. He's probably... I said here, yeah, I think Zeus is probably the only god that I would say is potentially better than Aphrodite so far in the game, in the current balance. He's very, very powerful. Yesterday, I beat Kronos with a Zeus build. It was actually probably my best build so far. I felt it was just fantastic. It was a dagger build, so I was, oh my god, that's a Zeus, man. See where this is going. So the thing is that with Zeus, and it's the sassy thing in the first game, I would say. I think he's the best god in the first game, honestly. But the thing with him is that you need to have all Zeus, okay? So yesterday, I had a build, and I think I had like 10 boons of Zeus or something. It was something absurd. I had like every Zeus boon. I think I had like 10. Then I was like, I had like 10 as a wind element. It was like insane. I had like every boon he has in the game on the same time. So obviously it's lucky, right? It's a roguelike game. Sometimes you get lucky and you get more of the same god or whatever. And the thing is with Zeus that he works so good. You should have all of them. Like, this is fantastic because he basically has this thing, right? When you hit an enemy, they throw a lightning bolt, whatever, right? And then there's another bonus like, well, if you do a lightning bolt, it might be 2 lightning bolts, right? And then you have this other thing like, well, if you do a blitz on them, this is his debuff, his dot debuff, basically. That one also might give other people blitz or whatever. But then you have another debuff that is like, every time someone takes damage, they can't take less than 30 damage. And it makes every lightning ball do like double the damage or whatever. Like, it makes them do minimum 30, right? And suddenly all these like tiny lightning bolts are doing like insane damage, and they're all shading to each other, and you do like infinite damage. And actually, in my yes, I had Artemis too. Every time I do an attack, I also get an Artemis arrow flying. But then I had the double quick speed attack right on my dagger. So I was like, so I was just going around like insta killing. Even Kronos died in like a second. Yeah, and he's hit him with like 1,000 lightning bolts and arrows immediately, and he was inside. Like I killed him. Just like I didn't even avoid him. Seriously, I went to Kronos with my full Zeus build, and I didn't even avoid him. Basically, I had like 4 life. I was like I just stood like just holding the button and just insta killed him. Yeah, like immediately. Right? So Zeus, amazing boons if you get all of them. Like seriously. However, I will say he's a pretty weak god if you only get like 1 or 2 boons. He's basically trashed here if you only get like 1 of them. I will admit to that, so maybe he shouldn't be godlike. So I think some of his boons are like, well, okay, you need to have like 3 of those boons to make him work. But, like I said earlier, this tier is here and focus mostly on how strong are the gods individually, right? You focus on them. Because the best way to make a talent tree, right, in this game, so to speak, a build, is to pick like everything with the same god, right? The easiest way to play this game is to keep picking the same god over and over again to get their infusion, elemental buff, and so on, right? So if I'm playing Aphrodite, which of course is my favorite god, right? You know that. Then I pick every time I see her, I pick her again, right? But if I'm playing her build, right, it's like, oh, double damage if I'm close to them, then I want that mana thing, right? My mana regen if I'm close to them. I want that, because I know it's gonna work, I know that it's gonna stack up, right? So, basically in this game, there's no purpose to like, not have a main focus and keep taking the same boon over and over again. Same thing I mentioned, Demeter, right? If you have her frozen thing, I want that storm element, right? To also put that on the winter and so on. I want it all at the same time, right? You usually always want to have more of the same god, because it gives you like a really good, infusion as well, right? Later on, right? There's another build where you have like 2 of every god to get the other element. It's also pretty good. So either you have a little bit of everyone or one of all of one guy. Yeah, you don't want to have like a little bit of that thing. It's one thing though if you have 2 gods with the same element. That's one thing though. Like you go like double fire, right? Okay, that's one thing. So you can get the fire infusion. That's fine. But usually you want to have like an element focus. Okay. And then obviously Zeus then is the best god if you want to have his wind, of course, then wind, lightning, yeah. So focus on him is the best thing. Eventually you get the legendary boon that is like they spawn. It's interesting. The legendary boon with Zeus is that It might instantaneously defeat an enemy. It doesn't kill a boss, of course, but it actually works on the guardians. Yeah. So I played yesterday, and I didn't know that, but when I entered the guardian room on the 4th floor, that boss immediately died. So I was like, okay. I mean, I had incredible DPS, but I was like, okay, fine. It's like, so that debuff is actually even better than I thought it was. Yeah. So basically, it's like, I think it's 8% chance that any enemy that spawns will instantaneously die. And yes, again, then it works on everything except the main bosses. So that is pretty good also for Zeus, even on Kronos, because you can insta-kill his spawns then, a few of them. But that's just like, top icing on the cake, right? Otherwise, Blitz is actually a pretty decent side team, because it doesn't actually work like, it doesn't work like Hephaestus or Hestia, right? So they give you a dot, right? But Blitz isn't a dot. Blitz is more like a debuff that is like, if you take 100 damage, this thing activates, and you take 100 more damage or whatever. So it's basically, the more damage you do, the more you will trigger Blitz strike, because as long as you do high damage, Blitz will trigger. That being said, though, I find the only issue with Zeus is he's pretty bad early game, because Blitz is very powerful. Seriously, Blitz is much, much, much more powerful than Blast Furnace and whatever Scorch is, right? Because again, you hit them again, and then the Blitz activates, and it basically makes your every second attack is kind of like a blighting strike, right? It gives you basically like a blighting strike per second move you do, right? If you do high damage for your attacks, right? So things that is really, really good on bosses, of course, because it basically like makes you do every second attacks on the blighting bot, right? Yeah, so it's very, very good. However, on early game, instead of Captain, of course, but like the first enemies, Blitz never activates because it died before that. Yeah, so he's really terrible in that sense for the first, like 20 encounters, because you will never activate your Blitz. They will die before Blitz hits them. So it's not very useful, except maybe some armor enemies. But on bosses, of course, Blitz is incredibly powerful. It is much, much stronger than this other like dot things. Because it's more like a debuff. Yeah, see it more as, if I take enough damage, I take bonus damage, right? So it's a different thing, because of course it means that the faster you hit them, the more Blitz they can take. You know what I mean? The faster you can activate the Blitz on them, you can reapply it again, right? So it stacks on your attack speed / your attack damage, right? Which again makes it burst all the time, right? If you have like a really, really quick attack, I got dagger build, something like, I burst all the time. And then I had like my Blitz might do double blitzing and so on. So it was fantastic. It melted every boss immediately. It melted Kronos, just just walking in there. I didn't have to avoid him. Just half his life in like a second. Yeah, like insanely good build. But I might start biased now that because it happened. It's my last run, so it's very fresh in my head. It's my last run before before I made the video. But basically, I think it kind of explains the power of Zeus, right? And like I said, I found him to be the best god in the first game as well. Not in every patch or whatever, but when I played it back in the days, because same thing there. As long as you pick everything with Zeus, as long as you pick if you get like 5-6 Boons with him, he suddenly becomes incredibly powerful because they all stack too. And the thing is that with Zeus, though, honestly, it kind of shows you the game has some issues. Like honestly, I mean, I love this game. It's a great game, right? But honestly, Zeus shows you that the game has a weird design flaws, because Zeus, like I keep saying, right, he is better. For every boon you get with Zeus, he does more damage. I mean, sure, there are some boons like sprinting or whatever, but they're all terrible. But almost every Zeus boon will make Zeus do more damage, right? And basically, his other boon will be better, so to speak. But then you have a character like Hephaestus, which is like, well, half the boons here doesn't do anything for your other boons. Hestia is like, well, I guess, like, but more scorching than to do anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different thing, right? And what I mean is that, think about this thing. With Zeus, it's like, the passive is like, oh yeah, like your Blitz hits twice now, like doubling your Blitz damage. Or every time you do a lightning bolt on them, it's like the lightning bolt thing, it hits 2 guys now. So double lightning bolts, you're gonna like melt all the tiny guys immediately. Like, they're gonna destroy the ads constantly. But the Hestia is like, I don't know, you do a little more, like you get like another dot or something. Yeah, it's like, it's weird. Like her passive should be like every time you apply two burning, you know what I mean? That would be more like how Zeus works, right? So her boons doesn't stack properly together. And the same thing with the Hephaestus and Poseidon and so on. They don't stack properly, right? So it's like a really weird design flaw, honestly. And I mean, like I was saying, I love the game, but it isn't very good balanced. And obviously, I avoid all these three bottom gods here completely all the time, if I can, because I want the gods that keep stacking, right? You know. And obviously, stuff like Hermes, that makes you attack faster. That stacks with with Zeus and so on, right? Or more or double damage and so on. And Aphrodite, of course, also Aphrodite and Zeus are actually very good together too. So yeah, they all work really well together there. Let's do Hera then. So spoilers, minor spoilers here then. To get Hera, you have to get up to the surface, basically. Yeah, honestly, because you don't have to beat the surface. No, you get to the kind of weird, honestly. Yeah, I think you have to get inside the house at the surface. So maybe you need to do it the first spell that makes you last on the surface. And then you get her or something. Honestly, I'm not sure. Basically, you have to get the surface for a while and then you get her. And then she will both appear in the surface and in the hell. So she appears in both places. But anyway, Hera is similar to Aphrodite or whatever. She gives you like a debuff called Hitch. That gives them... Honestly, the debuff is better than Aphrodite though. It's better than Weaken. It makes take more damage then. But I will say, I put her somewhere here, honestly. Because, I mean, basically... First of all, I don't think she feels like a very good designed goddess. She feels like she's a weaker Aphrodite. She's very, very similar to Aphrodite. Yeah, I feel like this is like, they're like, oh, we need more gods in the game. Well, what if they're not a female character? I don't know. It feels very similar. Like I said, she's basically like a better debuff than Aphrodite, but otherwise she also gives you percentage damage, which is basically good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. But she really feels like it's like a weaker Aphrodite. Very similar passive, very similar debuff, but it's a better debuff, but less percentage, right, on her basic attack. So, she's like okay, honestly. And she's like, with Aphrodite, I think it's her best combo, I said earlier, in Aphrodite. So, that's a very good duo. I mentioned earlier, this duo is arguably the best duo Boon in the game, is Aphrodite plus Hera. So you have those two together, right? And they both give you percentage increase. This made both the debuff Hitch and Weaken better, and so on. So this is the best. I think the best games duo is Hera and Aphrodite. Yeah, the best debuff in the game and duo thing. So that's like a really good combo. But I wouldn't put her in like godlike tier because she's, to me, in my opinion at least, most of the time used a strictly worse Aphrodite. Kind of puts her in the Demeter level, where it's like, okay, she does more. Her debuff isn't as useful. Demeter's debuff is like actually crowd control, right? This is like a damage debuff, so it's less useful, but also makes you do more damage. So she's somewhere around this. I think she's fairly somewhere with Demeter level. Definitely better than Poseidon, because again, she's not flat like him. She's based on percentage. Of course, makes her much better than these guys. And again, right, her debuff Hitch is much better than Scorch. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, why would ever play Hestia, right? So she's probably fairly somewhere around here, honestly. And maybe a little bit like that. Depends on your build a little bit. And of course, she does work better with Zeus than Demeter does. Yeah, but she's somewhere here. Hard to put it, honestly. And Selene is here too, so... But it's probably something like this, honestly. But she's not a godlike level, but she has a pretty good... But again, I feel she's like a strictly worse Aphrodite, right? But like I said, that's also why they have the amazing combo then, because if she's similar to Aphrodite, then you can't pick Aphrodite. And I see a Hera or like a Zeus door, I probably pick Hera actually, because I want a duo, right? But if I see like, if I'm playing Zeus and I see a Hermes door, right, I'll probably pick that instead of the Aphrodite. So it's hard to say, but talk about it at the end of the video here, how you combine them a little more, but I think you can kind of see how you combine them, right, honestly, in my opinion. This tier list tells you how to combine them. I'll say it here after we go over the last boons here, but very briefly, I mean, immediately, like I said, if these two are very similar, they probably stack better, right? But anyway, I think the next, let's do Appolo. And Appolo I put somewhere up here too, also pretty good. He's not trash T, he's percentage based, he has a longer range. Appolo is somewhere I put somewhere here probably. So Appolo is interesting. He's again similar to like Aphrodite and Hera and so on, right? It's percentage. So, but he doesn't do as high percentage. So he's like 50% damage increase, right? Aphrodite is like 100%, so he obviously is way worse than that. But he gives you like range increase instead. So he's like a very medium guy where he gives you like double the range, 50% damage, whatever kind of thing. So he makes you hit really, really far. I mean, some builds with the axe example, you can hit like the whole screen with that. So it's really good early game. And he has like a bunch of like, oh, you hit twice kind of thing, you hit faster kind of thing. So similar to Hermes. So again, he's like a, you know, a good percentage builder guy. And I put him somewhere here in the middle. But that being said though, honestly, do I prefer having like Demeter's like slowing them down or his like further range? He does slightly more damage than her, to be fair. He gives you definitely more damage increase than Demeter does, but him like adding like a double range to you versus her slowing them down. The thing is that even if I said what kind of hard and earlier said, well, this slowdown to really work on bosses like Chronos, right? The thing is that this like maximum range thing is kind of like whatever on the boss, right? Because you don't really need it. Maybe a little bit on the calibers, depending on your weapon, but not really. So honestly, I would say that her slowing them down is more effective than him making you reach them from the whole screen. That being said, I mean, there are some funny Appolo builds with, like, if you have the one where your knife goes back to you, so you throw the knife right, and you have like the increased range from Appolo and so on, and increased AoE range, so you throw the knife and it kills everything in the whole screen basically. So it flies like this. So it flies back to you again, and the skull is the same thing too. You have this bouncing skull thing. You throw the thing and you do the skull dash thing, and it hits like a whole screen, or the whole room. I mean, everything dies immediately. So he's pretty good. Like, he's pretty good. But I think that the value, right, is rather on bosses, right. I said earlier, I said again, right. To kind of come back to is that you should really prefer being strong on a boss than on ads, right? You know, because absolutely, I think that Appolo is better than freezing on most boss encounters. Sorry, I mean non-boss. I mean, yeah, sorry, on most ads. If I pure look at like this is a floor fight, right? A lot of enemies. Then Appolo is better because even if you don't do crowd control, most of his abilities do so much AoE damage. If you just throw it and you just kill everything immediately, that's better, right? But again, for a boss, it doesn't necessarily do much. But like I said, he also increases your damage by like 50, 60% so on. So he also gives you a percentage increase in your damage, which is pretty decent at high level also. So he isn't just doing like AoE, right? And he also gives you like double attack and faster attack. He has interesting abilities. So Appolo is pretty good too. But I think that Appolo as a boon, right? He's not your main boon, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm playing Aphrodite, right, as my main boon, and have double damage as my basic thing, right, then I pick up on Appolo, who needs more attack speed or whatever, like Hermes and so on, both of them, they kind of work as like a supplement boon, right, that makes you stronger. So, Appolo, again, is a good boon to kind of keep picking him like later game, but he's not very good on, like, as your main, yeah. You don't want him to be your main attack, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't happen much, but he certainly is very good though on the first floor though. He just immediately destroyed the whole room with one swing basically, so it's pretty fun. But it makes you clear the first floor very quickly, certainly. But it's not that good on bosses, right? But he's interesting. I think he fairly is in like lower A tier because I still think on the bosses it's better to freeze them. It's better to be able to freeze them. You very rarely will the range help you. It's probably like if you have certain weapons and you don't want to get closer to carriers, maybe. But nah, it's probably like this is fair to me. And then lastly, we have Artemis. I'm gonna cover a little bit of the Boon Combos valuable. The Artemis. So Artemis is a little unfair, I have to say here. Honestly, I don't want to put her in this list, but she's whatever. She's a boon. And also, I guess you have Hades too then, but it's a little bit like, you know. So, both of these are a little unfair, right? I put them in mid just to have it pointed out here. So, Artemis or Kowash is like randomly comes into you. And actually, to be fair, we also should have Arachne then, the spider, Nazi, and if you're gonna have super fair here, we should have the other, and we should have the, you know, the other characters too, right? They kind of gives you all the stuff and so on. But seriously, to explain it briefly, right? Arachne is like, oh, you get a suit. It is sometimes better than your boon, but it really depends, right? So, for example, Arachne gives you a suit. It's random then, but Arachne gives you more gold. That's pretty fine. That's about it. The other suits are useless. She's actually is trashed here. She isn't actually that good, honestly, right? Because yeah, it's like, you get a little more gold. All the other suits don't do anything, I think. No, they're like, the other suits are like, you get more mana temporarily, you get more life, whatever. But the only one that will help you on the first floor is basically the gold one. So you get like 5 gold per floor. As long as you don't take any damage, you get more gold. So it's pretty decent. You can get like a few hundred gold in that, but you probably will get like maybe 20 gold in that. Yeah, it's like okay. She is worse than basically every boon, whatever you can find, right, on that floor. Next guy is the, what is he called? Narcissus. He's also pretty, he's like here somewhere. He's also kind of bad. But the thing is, with Narcissism, and I would say it immediately, he said it actually, they are both a little unfair to say that they're trashy, because Narcissism and Arachne, they both have this thing that, yes, her best thing is to get the gold. However, she gives you like a fabric or someone. She gives you like actual, tools for your account, right? Like for outside the current run, so to speak. He does the same thing. He basically just gives you stuff like seeds and so on, mystery seeds, like bones or whatever, psyche and so on and so on. Yeah, psyche and so on. So he gives you stuff that is good like outside that thing. So he's actually very unfair, because he's basically like looking at it like, oh, do you want to have a boon now, or do you want to have 50 more psych? Well, 50 more psych is better for your account, right? So it's a little bit, yeah. And honestly, Arachne is the same way. She kind of like, oh yeah, it's like, do you want to have this fabric, or do you want to have a boon? Well, I want the fabric for my account. So it's like, yeah, honestly, she's better, I guess, purposely. But if you only play her based on like the chance to beat the game, then they're both trashy. Yeah, if you're talking about like beating the game, don't take this stars at all. Hades though is a little different. He gives you an anti-Chronos debuff basically. It depends, but he's basically always a peak because he has the ones like Chronos takes 20% max health damage, Chronos spawns half the amount of enemies, and so on. So he's like a noble. He's a very, very powerful, but that's like again special case. And then lastly, Artemis. So Artemis is not the same as those guys, but kind of similar, right? She's basically like, sometimes she joins and helps you, same thing with Nemesis or whatever. But yeah, she randomly joins you. And I think that you can't actually pick her. What I mean with that is that you can't even see her on the door, right? So you can't be like, if I take the left door, I'm gonna get a Zeus boon and an Artemis boon. She's completely random if she jumps in or not. So you can't actually like, plan out for her or whatever. And what can I say then? Still though about her, I don't think her boons are that good either. Honestly, it basically is making crit, right? So it allows critting. Usually you get like 1 Artemis per run. Maybe I have seen 2 sometimes, but it's very uncommon. I would say, in my experience, you get like 1 per run if you do a full run, basically. And then you have the boon that either gives you more crit, different ways, like if they have lost life, if you have full life, and so on. And then you have the one which is the best if you have high attack speed, which is the arrow one. Like I said in my last run, I had arrow spam with her because I had Zeus build, right? So that's by far the best boon, I would say. The one that shoots 15 damage arrows every time you hit them, because if you have a very, very high attack speed, like a projectile spamming ability, right, with your knives, them, this arrow is incredibly powerful because you send like 10 arrows per second. So it's very, very powerful, much better than crits. If you have like an axe build, the crit one can be crazy, because if you crit, you do like double damage on your quadruple damage. Suddenly you do like 16 damage or something, So you like one sort of boss basically. So, but overall though, her boons isn't that good, honestly. No, there's like a minor damage decrease. And like I said, if you have a high attack speed boons, then I would go for the arrow one. And if you have high flat damage or so on, you crit, right? Yeah, so that's basically it. But again, you can't predict her. She appears randomly, so you can't plan for her, right? And also, she shouldn't remove your other boons, right? Like if you pick up like a fire boon, so to speak, she also appears basically as a bonus. Like it doesn't actually she doesn't like replace the boon, so she's an added extra damage boon, right? But I mean, guys, this kind of is the general tilt. So we just like the video, if you like subscribe, stuff like that. But I think it's a little bit like you have to talk about, okay, how do we combine them and so. Okay, so if you now look at this combination a little bit, right? I just want to cover a little bit how I combine these boons. These are them, the tier list, right? Aphrodite is the best goddess by far, percentage based, you know, is the highest damage, best, absolutely the best base to start with. Hera is like a worse Aphrodite, but you know, she's very similar, so, and they combo together fantastically. So this is the best duo. Hermes is a good basic boost for any build. City with Chaos. These two guys just boost your whatever you're doing, right? Boost your damage, boost your speed, so on. Demeter has one of the best debuff. Some damage increase. Appolo similarly. Some damage increase. Range increase. So pretty good. And then they got the flat guys. They're all terrible, right? They're flat. Doesn't increase your damage. It's just like works very static. Like 400 more damage. Never does more damage. It's terrible. And yeah, they're all shit. But how do we combine them? Very briefly, right? Like I said, Hera, Aphrodite Light. That works because they're both percentage based. Same thing here. Then you want to have more of this, right? So if you don't get Hera, you might get, for example, Hermes, right? You know what? Increase attack speed, right? If you don't get Hermes, you get Chaos, right? This is how you combine it. You take this character with, you know, percentage based. You want more of that, right? You know. Same thing with Hera, of course. What is her best combination? Well, obviously, if it's not her, then you're gonna pick the other ones. So that also works. On Demeter, Hera and Appolo, right? Or vice versa, right? Appolo and Demeter works, right? So basically, this one works together because, yeah, you know, increase attack, and so on. Attack speed, more base damage, right? These all work together. Zeus is special because he benefits the most from attack speed usually in your builds, which then Hermes and Chaos gives you, and also Appolo. But also, you know, the close combat like lightning spam build also is very effective because, again, the best weapon with Zeus I would say is the dagger. Best weapon with Aphrodite also the dagger, so they have the best shared weapon, so that's pretty nice as well, right? And the builds tend to be kind of similar. No, Selene is interesting. She's just really stacked with anyone, but she's like a weird character, right? She does like, but she just gives you like 25% more flat damage and like some weird ability, and you make you immortal for 10 seconds. She's just like a weird character that makes you better, but yeah, she kind of exists. And honestly, what makes Hestia better, for example, it's like attack speed, I guess. So it's like Hermes, Chaos, maybe a little bit Zeus, but I mean, they're just terrible. Usually them together is like the fire thing, but it doesn't make you much better. Hephaestus is like, nothing makes him better. I mean, that's the thing. Nothing actually makes him better whatsoever. Because, for example, if you play Zeus and you get his hard to get ability, this is a very rare boon, but the one that flats out, everything does 30 damage, right? What makes his lightning bolt better and so on. That also makes Hestia's dot better. But it doesn't have Hephaestus. So, honestly, I don't generally know anyone that makes Hephaestus better. Because there's nothing that makes him better, because having higher attack speed doesn't help with his abilities. Having higher, you know, like an axe or whatever, like a high attack damage, base attack damage, doesn't help either. The only thing that makes his ability better is basically AoE, I guess, so everyone gets hit. So I guess Appolo makes him better, like so that. But again, on boss it doesn't matter, so I don't know, genuinely, nothing makes Hephaestus better. He doesn't have anything combining that makes his ability to do more damage, because they're all like flat damage. It only is better by your range, basically, and AoEing it. But again, like, that's just for the rooms then. But again, that's why he's trash tier, right? That's why he's trash tier, yeah. Like, there's nothing that makes him better. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, his best boon is basically the one that if you take damage, you do more damage for a while, like revenge. For like 10 seconds, you do more damage. That's like the best boon he has, basically. Because it works with everyone. Like, it's like 10% more damage increase for whatever it is. Like, it works for everyone. He generally doesn't have any good, because his shield stuff. No, it's like, I don't know, honestly. And he also has the booms, like, you get armor. Gaining armor is not really useful as health, but it's like worse than getting health and so on. No, honestly, nothing for him stacks. Poseidon is like weird, similarly kind of weird, but he at least gets better by other debuffs. Yeah, he's like slippery in his knockback. That does stack with like freezing. and it stacks with like the lightning trap thing. It stacks with like Apollo's range in sense because you can knock them back on the whole screen or whatever. So at least him from like a crowd control standpoint with Poseidon, it makes it better. And if you knock them back, they have more damage. So him and Apollo, for example, actually does combine. But the thing is that again, this is all pointless on any strong enemies. These are only good for crowd control for smaller enemies, which is actually never the issue in the game, I feel. But certainly sometimes you have builds that are very, very good against bosses, and it's terrible against enemies, which is kind of funny. Usually I think it's rare to happen though, but sometimes I feel like, oh my god, this build is so bad against normal like enemies. Yeah, it takes so much time to kill enemies. But I mean, I guess my main point, right, in the video here too, is that very rarely will you have a build that is good against a boss and doesn't do good against enemies, like the normal creeps. Basically, every time you have a boss anti-boss build, it will be decent enough to defeat all the mobs, right? Sure, you might struggle a little bit, you might have to take more time on you. It won't be like a speed run, you know what I mean? It won't be a good speed run, but basically it's like I never felt that I managed to build a bad like mob build, to speak. Just worse ones, right? However, and this is my last point of the video here, you can make builds which are very anti-mobs, right? You can make builds which are like incredibly good at shredding all the tiny guys, you know? Especially with like Apollo and so on, yeah, max range it out, Hephaestus to dot them all immediately, and they'll take like 800 damage immediately. You can make some crazy bits like that, right? You can make the knife turn around you when it goes back to you, with a skull thing, you drive forward. You can make so many, like, again, like anti-floor builds, anti like room builds, if you call it, right? You just immediately, you AoE the whole room and so on, and everyone's dies, right? You can make that, but all those builds are basically terrible against any boss right there. And maybe Skyla because like 3 bosses, but you get my point. It's like, but they're all terrible against bosses. Maybe actually the Cabadias perhaps as opposed to 4 hands. But you get my point. They're all like terrible against what it actually matters, right? It just makes it like fast to run through. That being said though, to some extent, I want to put out though, sometimes those like max AoE builds aren't that bad if you do like a loot run, right? If your run isn't like, oh, I just want to go and defeat Kronos, my run is to just pick up every psych, every bone, you know, every nectar. I'm going for a run that is like, I'm not going for an optimal build, I'm going for a very fast run, like a grind, you know. I'm just gonna grind, pick up all the items, except nectar or so on. I'm doing this for that stuff, so I'm not even trying to maximize my damage. I'm trying to just like get more items, right? Then AoE builds are much better, yeah. So then you basically expect to not defeat Kronos, right? It's very hard beating the last boss if you take all the items that helps you outside, you know, in your back in your village, basically, yeah. So certainly, sometimes when I felt, oh, this is just like a resource run, I'm just gonna pick up all the nectar, basically, yeah, okay. Then I might go for an AoE build that like does a lot of quick floor cleaning, right? But of course, it would be terrible bosses. Well, guys, that's the video, guys. What do you think? Subscribe, slap button, have a great day.